I'm not here to tell somebody that you have a porn addiction. That's never been my goal or objective in anything that I do. I want to raise awareness on the issue because I think a lot of guys are aware they have a problem, but are avoiding it because porn addiction isn't a real thing. Well, that's the key, right? Is you have to admit it to yourself first. Accept it. Hey, I got a problem. Like, I have a porn addiction and it's impacting my life in whatever these areas are. Once you've accepted that in yourself, then it's finding the other person, the right person to have that conversation with. So talking about the steps to overcoming this. Admit it, own it yourself, take responsibility.
What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs today in the studio, folks. As always, another real treat for you. Frank Rich is in the house. What's cracking?
Brad, good to be here, brother. Thank you.
Dude, you got a pretty good podcast. Everyone should go listen to the Superhuman Life Podcast. You can find him at Coach Frank Rich.
Coach Frank Rich, yes, sir.
And Rebuilt Recovery is his website, rebuiltrecovery.com. So, dude, you basically help people with porn addiction. Now, I don't know where your story begins. You used to be a bodybuilder. You're an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. So where did your story begin? You said you were an addict yourself. What, of porn or drugs or what?
Yeah, man. I've had my struggles and issues with drugs and alcohol, and we talked a little bit about that on the podcast. I became aware of my porn addiction in late 2018. We don't need to go back the whole story. Getting introduced to it at 6, coming up, growing up, struggling with it. The rise of technology for me is when it really began to escalate. And,
what's addicted?
Clinically or?
Well, I mean, like, dude, you are exposed to porn growing up. When I was, I think maybe 6, 7 years old, I got in trouble because I took my dad's Playboy magazines and I spray painted the boobs and the private parts in the magazine. And, he got pissed, obviously, but I was exposed to Playboy magazines as a little kid age.
As most boys are,
yeah,
as I was as well, right?
So that ain't addicted.
No, and
what causes you to be? What makes you addicted? Like when you watch it every day?
I think when it's impacting other areas of your life. Is it impacting your intimate relationships? Are you avoiding social interactions? Are you struggling with some of the mental health side effects that we can kind of dive into if you're curious around some of that stuff? But I think when it's having impact on areas outside of your life, I'm never one to say that just because you watch porn you have a problem with it. I mean, I don't think that it's good and healthy for anybody, especially in today's age, to consume it
at all.
I don't believe so. There's too many links to human trafficking, and we can go down deep holes there if you wanted to, but I am, I guess, anti-porn if you wanted to kind of put a label on it. But I don't think that it's healthy because how it changes the way you see people, how it changes your intimate relationships. And you talked about seeing your dad's magazine when you were a little boy. I think the internet has created a different type of drug, right? The way that it rewires your brain, the way that it increases dopamine, just it's on a whole different level. So I don't think it's healthy for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm not one to, argue much because I'm not a big porn guy in the first place, but I've watched it. And, I've never really thought, people shouldn't watch it because, like, who cares? Like, there's a couple people fucking, who cares? Like, what does that affect people? Like, what have you seen in your work where like guys what have they lost? What are they sitting at home jacking off all day? Like, what? I don't get the addiction part.
Yeah, I mean, just like with anything, right? You can have a drink, you can have a couple drinks, once a week, once a month, and it maybe not be a problem. But the guy that is leaving work 15 minutes early, the guy that can't go home without stopping at the bar, the guy that is avoiding relationships, avoiding social interactions, I think the same issues begin to manifest with a porn addiction. Now we can't say, because there's a lot of research now that is showing that when you watch people having sex, the part of your brain that is highlighted, or the part of the brain that really lights up, is a part that's associated with objects. So we talk about objectification of women. You're literally rewiring your brain to see people as objects. So yeah, it's a drug in and of itself that is rewiring people's brains. It's changing their hearts. It's changing relationships. I mean, if you are avoiding, for the young guys out there, if you're avoiding approaching women because you have everything you want at home with porn, then you're going to get into some issues there.
But I mean, is there dudes like that? Because porn makes me want to go get women. Like if I watch a fucking porn, you get freaking horny. You're like, dude, I got to get some chicks.
Oh, dude. I mean, hundreds of guys that I speak to on a monthly basis, right? I mean, these guys, you're in your early 50s,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
well,
so
mid 50s now.
Mid 50s, yeah. So we have, Brad, we have a generation that is coming up now. There's in the early 20s. I don't know if it's Generation Z, but has had access to a smartphone since they were in elementary school.
Yeah.
As that brain is being developed, like they're consuming pornography. The average age of first exposure is somewhere between 9 to 11 years old. So I think it's changing society. It's changing men. And it's great that you haven't fallen into that, but I've had guys in your generation. I've had guys that are 50s into 60s that erectile dysfunction has now begun to become an issue. They can't even perform sexually with their wives or partners. So
without porn or what do you mean?
So because
that ain't porn, is it? That's the food. That's the fucking chemicals.
Well, I would say that probably those factors are playing into that as well. But
because porn does the opposite for hard-ons, doesn't it?
Well, not if you've wired yourself as the pathway to orgasm is through watching a screen and touching yourself. Like over time, that becomes how your body wants to get it. Brad, I struggled with this in my 30s. Like I had beautiful women that I had relationships with, and I was healthy. I was a bodybuilder. You talked about it in the intro there. But for a young guy in his early 30s that couldn't perform sexually, like without using porn either before, during, or after to complete it, that's a problem.
Sounds like one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never I guess I just can't wrap my head around it because, but I can't wrap my head around anybody being fucking addicted to heroin either. Like, dude, are you stupid? But heroin I see because like you do it and you like, you need more. Mm-hmm. So there are people that literally, have a secret porn addiction to where every time they get a chance, they're watching porn, which could be any second with this thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think the stat is somewhere around 40% of people have admitted to watching porn at work.
And then you've heard of Andrew Tate, I'm sure.
Obviously, yes.
Tate and a couple of these guys that are running around right now, they're against porn. They're saying, porn will hurt you. Mm-hmm. I've never really thought of it that way, which is interesting.
Yeah, I love that guys like Tate and the larger platforms are using it because, like I said, man, for me up until 2018, it was something like if I would have thought about it, yeah, I maybe had an irregular relationship with pornography. I probably maybe use it back then if I thought about it. I was using it more than regular people. There were definitely times I've used it in public type of restrooms. There were times I avoided social interactions. There were times I left social interactions to go home to watch porn. But I don't think I would have ever actually said I was a porn addict up until 2018 because it wasn't a conversation. I started my podcast back in 2019 because when I got on the other side of it and I got freedom, I felt different. I saw the world differently. I saw myself differently. I felt more connected to people than I'd ever been in my entire life. And I saw an opportunity to maybe speak to the younger men out there, because could I have been saved of years of struggling? Could I have been saved of years of issues with it had there been guys that I looked up to talking about it? So that was really the driving desire for me to start having the conversations on the podcast around it. And out of that really birthed the coaching. Like I didn't set down this path, 4.5 years ago to say, I want to start coaching men. I want to start helping men overcome pornography addiction. It came to me just by having the conversation regularly. So I love seeing guys like Tate and the bigger platforms out there, and even you today, bringing awareness to this.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really said don't watch it because again, I don't even acknowledge. It's like even when you said it in there, I'm like porn addiction. See, I just can't like. So what are the?
Well, I would say we can dissect your life, right, and maybe see why it's not even a major issue. I mean, you're living in what you maybe describe as a purpose or bigger calling for your life. Like you're having massive impact on the world and people around you. You wake up every day with something to look forward to. I've seen your social media. I've heard you talk about your wife and your relationships. You have all these things that are fulfilling you. So the desire to go home at the end of the day and suppress yourself, or not suppress yourself, almost, just lose yourself, like just like you would with drinking or drugs, right? You're trying to suppress some feelings. The same thing happens with porn. So if a guy isn't checking a box in work, if he isn't checking box with his relationship, if he doesn't have social interactions, social friends, a social circle that he's involved with, that is going to create the desire. Well, let me go find and seek something. And porn, like you said, because it's not a drug, it's not, you don't feel impaired after. People in your life you're not walking around with like porn breath like you would if you're drinking all the time. So people don't know. I mean, I've even said for me, I struggled with it for 10 plus years and nobody in my life knew about it because I was able to keep it a secret.
What harm did it do you?
Well, I talked about, I had erectile dysfunction. I definitely had,
Maybe
issues.
that was the steroids.
Well, I never said I was on steroids, but
any bodybuilder's on steroids.
I have some friends that are natural bodybuilders.
Very, very few of those, but
yeah.
Usually you see the big rip bodybuilders, they're on something, which again, to me, I'm not against that either, but as long as it's, done correctly.
Well, So I don't actually think I don't think that would be the pathway there, right? Because you would actually go to a clinic and get prescribed testosterone as a way to fight some of the erectile dysfunction. So me injecting testosterone in my body wouldn't lead me to having a limp penis when I was trying to get intimate. Like,
it could if your estrogen levels were too high.
Yeah, which never was, because it was something that we always monitored and did when I was in competitive season.
So it wasn't that. It was because you were watching porn. This chick didn't turn you on?
Absolutely.
Because she wasn't getting all nasty and dirty like they do in the porn?
Well, what fires together wires together. What you consume on a regular basis becomes your natural, default ways of thinking and behaving. So absolutely. Brad, I've had guys literally reach out to me and said, Frank, I have to watch porn while I'm having sex with my wife. And sometimes it's extreme porn because the desensitization effect comes into play, which would point to it being an addiction. You need more and more or more hardcore material over time to produce the same effect.
So what's the solution?
Admitting it is the first step, right?
But if you're watching it, how do you know? Like some dudes, like, they'll whip out the fucking porn when they want to, rub one out real quick.
See, that's the thing.
Get a quick woody, bang, knock it out, freaking go back doing what you're doing. Now, again, you don't see me, hiding in the bathroom to whack out, but I'm not a horn dog. I've never really been a horn dog, but a lot of dudes are. They want to get laid constantly, and if they can't get laid, well, they rub one out.
Why can't he get laid?
For whatever reason, maybe they're fat. I don't know.
We'll I would say the solution then would be to fix those problems.
Maybe they don't have game.
Get game.
Well, that would be a better solution, yes. But to rub one out real quick once in a while, is there something wrong with that?
Well, no. So if a guy that rubs one out once in a while probably doesn't have an addiction. Like if he's
so how do you tell when like if someone's listening to this right now, I rub one out once in a while. I ain't addicted, but
the guy listening to this that's struggling with porn knows.
They already know.
He already knows. I'm not here to tell somebody that you have a porn addiction. That's never been my goal or objective in anything that I do. I want to raise awareness on the issue because I think a lot of guys know they are aware they have a problem, but are avoiding it because porn addiction isn't a real thing.
And who do you tell? That's embarrassing almost.
I had that. Well, that's the key, right? Is you have to admit it to yourself first. Accept it. Hey, I got a problem. Like I have a porn addiction and it's impacting my life in whatever these areas are. Once you've accepted that in yourself, then it's finding the other person, the right person to have that conversation with. So talking about the steps to overcoming this, admit it, own it yourself, take responsibility. Hey, I've gotten myself in this position, just like you would with any addiction. You know, there's nothing unique about a recovery program with pornography addiction. You look at what works with drugs, you look at what works with alcohol. So admit it, take ownership.
Do you have to do the 12 steps where you go apologize to people?
I don't know if you have to apologize. That's not one of our steps.
Yeah, because that would be mighty embarrassing. Call people and say, I just got to be honest. I got a porn addiction, and I need you to start helping me with it.
I think finding people in your life that you can own up to, and you could have honest conversations about the struggles that are going on in your life. I mean, Brad, you have I'm sure you have a network of guys that you go to when you're trying to process issues or when things aren't maybe going well in your life. Like you have strong guys that you reach out to. Find that, but in this area.
Well, that's why your group's important.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people, they're not going to. This is one of those topics that we don't talk about. Mm-hmm. Like I have a bunch of friends. We don't sit there and say, yeah, you ever see any good porn? What's your best porn stations? So, and it's not that they're not watching it. It's just you don't talk about that shit. So having a group is important. Is that Rebuilt Recovery?
Yeah, so Rebuilt Recovery. So we have programs, we have, tons of free content, free ebooks out there. There's a course 16 weeks long to kind of walk you through the steps, right? So there's going to be an underlying root issue for this. There's going to be something that is driving the need to feel intimately connected with a woman on a screen. So, it could be issues from past relationships. It could be issues with how you just seek intimacy with other people. But we want to get to what the root of that is. What are you avoiding in your life? And how are you using porn as a coping mechanism for that? So we'll walk you through a process of identifying some of those things in your life. But then, yes, it's getting in the community. It's having truthful, honest conversations on a regular basis. It's getting support. And then it's mapping out a plan. So if I'm here and I'm struggling with a porn addiction and my goal is to get on the other side of this thing and create what we call a porn-free life, there's going to be a process that you need to work through. Your day-to-day habits, what you consume, movies you watch, music you listen to, conversations that you have. One thing we're big on, and we do this in our second month of our program, is the service of these guys. We want them out there helping other people. When you're consuming porn, it's all about me. It's all about what Frank wants. It's all about what Brad wants. And you begin to create this ecosystem where everything in your life is about what I want. I had a guy in my program call it he had a relapse or a slip, and he's like, I felt like I had the gimmes, give me whatever I want. And if I don't get it, I act out like a child. I throw temper tantrums, all things that guys that are struggling with this do. So living in a state of service, thinking about how can I help provide service to other people is a big component of there as well. But yeah, I would say the biggest part of this is truthful and honest conversations about what's going on.
Is there any funding from governments? I'm sure there are for other recovery, houses.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no. And this is an uphill, I don't want to say it's an uphill battle I'm fighting. But I think because we're so early in just the awareness of what's going on. I mean, when we talk about pornography addiction, Brad, we're talking about the internet streaming pornography. Guys, maybe there were guys that were struggling with VHS and DVDs, but it's not the level where I can literally pick my phone up and the drug dealer's in my pocket with me 24/7. So the fact that the internet in the bandwidth that we have it today is really less than 2 decades old. When you look at it clinically, it's not really accepted. So the DSM-5, which talks about all addictions, pornography addiction is not even in there. So in terms of government funding, no, not at this point. Will that change in the future? It's something that it would obviously help our business. It would help us reach a lot more people, but it's not preventing us right now from doing anything.
Maybe it's because again, nobody kind of thinks of it as that. Because drugs, you end up in jail, you end up robbing people, your health goes away. Jacking off a lot, I'm not sure that's really going to harm you too much other than mentally. So it's more of a mental problem.
Well, it's a mental issue. There's emotional issues that are wrapped up in it. I would say it's a big spiritual battle as well.
Are you faith-based?
I am. Yeah.
What's the Bible say about whacking it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, a theologian. I'm pretty sure the Bible is against, masturbation.
I wonder.
It deems it as self-harm, I think is how it's perceived in different books. But I would say where it leads to though, is you have to understand that in time, if you're watching porn, multiple times a week, every day, multiple times a day, desensitization will kick in. Eventually, what you watch on the screen will stop working. So now you begin to go down a rabbit hole of consuming more hardcore material, different types of genres. Well, what happens when that stops working? Where do I go from here? Now we get into
you're murdering people.
You're not murdering. I mean,
could be. You ever heard of a necrophiliac?
Yeah, Ted Bundy talked a lot about how porn played a role in the warping of his mind and how he used to kind of act out some of his fantasies in some of his crimes that he committed. Where I was going to go, though, is going to lead to purchasing of sex, right? So if I can't get what I want from a screen and I have the means to do it, I can then go purchase sex. You know, prostitutions, escorts. We've had a lot of guys in our program that have openly talked about that. Well,
I can see how it leads to that.
That stops working. We clearly know that there is a tie between pornography and human trafficking. So the purchasers of sex slaves are guys that are struggling with porn addiction to some degree. It's somewhere in their journey. I don't believe you get to buying sex as a trafficker without having gone through the pornography tunnel. So I do think that is harming other people.
Well, you got to be a real, I would say, addicted individual to pay for sex slaves. In other words, you got to be really fucked up to pay for that shit. I'm not talking about a hooker. You know, you go pay for a hooker because she's, you know, you're wanting to have sex real quick. Which, by the way, I wouldn't recommend that at all anyway, just from the diseases. But sex slaves, especially child trafficking, you know, like, dude, there's some sick son of a bitches out there. You think they became that way from watching porn?
I think it played a role in it because every single time that I've heard that question or had somebody talk about speaking to victims. So I'm connected with a couple anti-human trafficking organizations in Tampa, Florida. We give funds on a yearly basis. We try to support, do what we can. We try to speak at their events if we're asked to. But I have a lot of guys that I know personally that work. So I have a friend that actually runs a buyer rehabilitation program in Tampa, Florida. This guy got connected with a couple months ago.
Did you say buyer?
Buyer rehabilitation program. So he helps rehabilitate sex buyers. So all of these guys that he's worked with have told him that their pathway started as a young boy with an introduction to pornography. It warped their mind. It created issues with their desires, issues with their intimacy. And in time, it leads them to acting out irrationally, just like any addict would, to the purchasing of sex slaves.
Damn. See, when you look at it like that, it's like, dang, that is kind of serious.
Yeah.
So is zero tolerance your view? Like, you don't watch porn, period?
For me personally, that's how I live my life out. Yeah.
Well, but if you're an admitted addict, that's how you're supposed to. In other words, you can't watch one porn, because then next thing you know, you'll be back at it. Just like drinkers, alcoholics. I was arguing one with the other day, when I say argue, I say debate. Debate's a better word.
Yeah.
If he has a drink, it's been, let's say, 20 years since he drank. If he has one drink, it's over. He'll go nuts. Now, again, I'm not going to dare him and test him, but I just don't believe that shit. Why? Well, because, dude, technically you just went 20 years without a fucking drink, so you can go without a drink. You tell me if you have one, you can't control yourself. He said no. And again, maybe that's true for some people. I can't wrap my arms around that one either. It's like, dude, that's a choice. That's a choice to get drunk.
No, I love that whole approach, man, because I believe watching porn is a choice too. And I think not watching it is a big choice we have to make. But I had a doctor on the podcast, Dr. Rob Kelly, who was an alcoholic, and he talks about the alcoholic's brain. So from a genetic kind of DNA perspective, there's a way that an addict's brain processes alcohol that when they do, if they go 10 years without it and they had that first sip, it almost takes them immediately back to where they were 10 years ago. So I think there were guys like that can say, no, I can't have one because I'm going to want to go all the way back to where I was. I do believe that can be true for some people. I think with pornography, though, is by the time you get to the point where you're reaching out to me and we're working together, it's had such a negative impact on your life. It's either impacted your career, it's impacted your relationships, your inability to create relationships. That's created this disgust with it that I don't even want it as a part of my life. I mean, if you talk to, I used to smoke cigarettes when I was in my early 20s, like just, fell into it through drinking and partying, and it just became a regular daily habit. But I was walking the strip last night. Like, you walk through a whiff of cigarette smoke. I love cigars, but you walk through a whiff of cigarette smoke, so it's got a different smell to it. It's got that disgust, like, in your gut. So I think for our guys, at least this has been my experience, is when they reach out to me, they're so disgusted with consuming porn that they're looking for a way to get it completely out of their life. They're not looking for, help me get free so that I can then manage a relationship with it. They're like, no, Frank, this has had such a negative impact on who I am and what I'm doing. I want it completely gone.
Interesting. If they're aware of it, that's, again, step one.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're reaching out to you, they're already heading in the right direction.
Exactly.
Talk about some of the problems that will develop, because you keep saying relationship, problems at work. Like, what problems at work can you get from watching porn? I always want to say whacking off, because those go together, don't they? You don't watch porn and not whack off, do you? Do people just sit there and watch it all day and not whack off?
Some guys do.
Well, that would be a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you're just stuck to watching it, like, you don't really do nothing about it, you're just watching it. Because, I mean, dude, generally when you talk about porn, you're thinking about either you're trying to get fucking extra horny for your girl because maybe she doesn't turn you on, but the the vixens on the TV are doing crazy shit, and you wouldn't dare ask your girl to do that, so you watch the porn just so you can freaking get into it. Well, if the porn wasn't there, you can't get into it. Is that what you're saying? Or is it the girl you're with you can't get into?
Yeah, so I think your perception of it is such a small percentage of the amount of guys that actually watch it. I don't think most guys out there that are consuming porn are consuming it to ramp themselves up to then go get it on with their girl.
You watch it to rub one out real quick.
But why?
To rub one out real quick. Because it's better than thinking about it. You're watching it.
See, guys are using it at the end of a stressful workday.
So if a guy's jacking off without porn, that's okay? Because what is he thinking about when he's jacking off? Porn. He's thinking about porn.
Yeah. So in recovery, and this is where some of these questions are kind of like, okay, I don't want to say they're double-sided, but it's almost like, are we speaking about a guy that is struggling with it, or are we speaking about a guy that is just healthy and isn't having issues? Well,
let's speak about it from a normal guy.
Okay.
Like, because that's how I'm thinking. I'm a normal guy. I'm not struggling with porn.
Yeah.
If right now they said porn is no longer allowed anywhere in the world, it wouldn't affect me one bit. I don't watch porn. I don't watch porn with my wife. We don't make porn. We don't film ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm not a big porn guy. However, I've seen porn, and I wouldn't have ever thought that there's people out there with a problem with porn. Addiction, maybe because they're horn dogs. They just want to fucking have sex all day. That makes sense. I mean, doesn't make sense, but I mean, I can understand that. But I don't understand having problems at work because of porn. Like, what kind of problem would you have at work? Like, you're at work and you can't work because you're thinking about watching porn?
Well, yeah, focus would clearly be one of them. Like, if you can't lock in and focus on a task for more than 15 minutes because your dopamine receptors have been completely fried from the amount of porn that you've consumed, maybe even the desire to actually go out and pursue goals at work. This is getting to the hijacking of dopamine and how it's, Brad, I've had guys that have literally, like, they don't clean their apartments. They don't do anything. Like, they are literally video games, pornography, video games, pornography, video games, pornography.
How do we help those people?
If they want it. I mean, if a guy doesn't want help, he's not going to be able to get help. So he's got to start with the desire and want to change, and then regular, truthful, honest conversations. Dr. Anna Lemke, who's the head of Stanford's addiction department, wrote Dopamine Nation, had her on the podcast. She says, so she works clinically, she does research and oversees Stanford's department. In her clinical work, during recovery with her patients and clients, 100% truthful honesty in all areas of your life. If you're late to work, why were you late to work? If you said you're going to do something and you didn't follow through on it, why? So truthful, honest speech across the board in all areas is definitely going to be one of the leading factors that's going to lead to successfully recovery. And then community, just like AA, 12 steps. Like, let's get in support groups and have other people that are around us cheering us on, but also hearing other stories of how are they winning. That's going to create some hope. That's going to create some, I want to go get that there as well. And then service. And then whatever it is, the root, right? Getting to what that root cause is. And that's going to be different for everybody.
Hey, you want to spend an hour a week with me helping you become a business badass? Well, check out my group in the link below. Sex addict is different than porn addict.
I believe so.
Because obviously sex, you have to have sex. Porn, you have to watch porn.
Yes.
Even though they're related, they're just not the same.
Yeah. And
which one would you think is worse?
Worse? For who?
For the individual.
I think any addiction is destructive to
but out of sex,
the human being.
Addicts and porn addicts, which do you think would be the worst?
I would say porn addiction.
See, I would say sex, because if you have to have sex and you're going to do anything to get it, including fucking rape, drugging people, chloroform, trafficking, I gotta have sex no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if I gotta fucking hold you down.
There's such a small percentage of those guys.
Those are like rapists, dude. There's more rapists than you think.
Yeah, but there's not more rapists than there are men struggling with a pornography addiction.
Well, that may be true, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I would rather have a dude watching porn than fucking raping a girl.
Wait, so are you saying what's worse for you and I, or what's worse for the individual?
Well,
I would say for the individual, it's going to be porn, because there's an organization that talks about the big 3 A's. So accessibility. We talked about it.
Way easier to watch porn.
Way easier. It's in my pocket 24 hours a day, so I can get it anytime I need it. And there's an infinite amount of supply. I mean, hundreds of millions of videos that you could consume on any of these sites.
For free.
Exactly. That's the second A, right? The affordability.
I always wonder how they make their money then.
The affordability.
Everything's free.
How does Facebook make money? How does Instagram make money? Exactly.
Selling your data.
Exactly.
So that's another way to get people to stop. Every time you go to one of these porn sites, you think you're being all secret and private. Somebody knows where you're at. They know what you're picking. Yeah. They know what you're choosing. You ever see the categories? You click them and all these different categories come up. It's like they know. If you're looking at, whatever you're selecting, they know.
Yeah. Some of the brightest engineers and some of the brightest psychologists in the world work for these pornography companies, because the engineers can create the algorithm. Then the psychologists can know what you're going to want before you know it. And that's where the algorithm can now, show you these different genres, show you the next video. So they make money on you. I mean, there's that famous saying from Social Dilemma, right? If you're getting a product for free, you have to realize that you are the product.
Yeah.
So
are you married? Are you married?
The 3 A's, right? So accessibility, it's in my pocket 24 hours a day, affordability, and then anonymity.
And then what?
Anonymity. Nobody's going to know about it.
Yeah.
There's no porn breath. There's no physical symptoms. Like, you can literally be in your home consuming it 8 hours a day, and not a single person would ever know about it.
That makes sense. Supposedly it's causing ED because you're watching it, and now regular sex. Because to me, dude, if you watch it there and they're doing it there, it's gonna work either way. To me, whether it's on TV or in person. If I walked into a room and there's freaking people banging,
but you're not a guy that really even likes to watch porn. So you're just thinking, like, you're seeing all of this through the lens that Brad sees the world through. But the guy that is consuming it, the guy that when he was 12 years old and is now 25, and his first introduction was this hardcore streaming threesome on Pornhub, and now that's where, oh my God, that's where I need to go. And then by the time he's 16, he's watching trans porn, and then by the time he's 20, he's having to, pop a blue pill, watch porn, and then go, purchase an escort. Like, that's a different perspective of how you're seeing the world. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't want to, show you my inbox, but I can show you the amount of hopeless men, the guys that are literally grown men, like in tears.
I believe it.
Reaching out to me.
It's pretty crazy. I'm glad there's, places that they can go. What would happen if there weren't, do you think?
Man, like
despair. Does it eventually, like if you said, what's going to happen if I keep doing coke, bro, you keep doing coke, you're going to end up in a shitty spot, maybe even dead.
Yeah. I mean, the way you begin to view yourself, right? How you see other people, it just creates this endless cycle of negative thinking. I mean,
so how did you fix it?
So I heard a podcast, and you asked me if I was faith-based. So I came to my faith in late 2018. I mindlessly kind of, strolled through the world with no real guiding light, no real star of what I was shooting at, just doing whatever Frank wanted to do, whatever made me feel good. Through a series of real powerful introductions to some great men in my life that became a positive influence on me, led me to asking myself some questions. So I came to my faith in 2018. Shortly before that, I heard a podcast, and hopefully this podcast today with you and I can maybe be that podcast for a guy out there. But for the first time in 2018, I heard two grown men talk about their struggles with it. And I think for me, that made me realize that I wasn't the only guy that had the issue, and that there was a pathway out of it. So coming to my faith was big. Getting radically honest with myself in February of 2019, actually owning it up. And then what I did, Brad, is not recommending this to everybody. I contacted everybody that I knew. Like every guy in my life, I said, can we meet for coffee? Can you jump on Zoom with me? I want to have a conversation with you. Because I was trying to process what was going on in my life, trying to process how did I get here and what's going to be the pathway out of it. So I'd reach out to my friends that were, business guys, that were lawyers, executives. And I would just be like, hey, Brad, we've known each other for 5 years. We've had a lot of great times. The gym, we're crushing it. I think I have a porn addiction, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And every time I talked about it, for one, the guy would put his arm around me, whether we were in person or through Zoom, he'd be like, it's going to be okay. I've dealt with similar issues here as well, and there's going to be a pathway out of this. So I started to find ways that I could do things for other people, started to find ways that I could process and figure out, okay, well, what led me to this? Well, there was a brief introduction when I was 6, 7 years old. The rise in internet when I was 15 became an issue. There was a break in my parents' relationship that when I was a teenager that created a lot of issues in me and just how I saw intimacy and relationships and marriage. So as I'm coming up, it's like I always had the porn there as like a safety net. No matter what was going on in my life, there was always porn there for me to escape into. And that's what it became. It became a way that it didn't matter if work was stressful, if relationships were stressful. At the end of the night, I could always lose myself in porn. It was identifying that for me, talking about it regularly. And then I've talked about it. I started the podcast 5 months after. So I think having the conversations as regular as I have and having guys now reach out to me has been very beneficial for me.
Almost therapeutic.
100%. Well, Bill W., the founder of 12 Steps AA, the only reason he started AA so Bill W. Was a drunk himself. Like he was an alcoholic, but the only way he was able to stay clean was by helping other addicts. So that's literally the creation of the 12-step program, was by the founder knew that if I can help other people, I can stay clean. So I think for me, it's been 4 years now of raising awareness, having conversations, and then being a mentor and coach to others to help them get out of it.
Do you find it difficult? Are you like, looking at your phone like, God damn it, I know there's some pussy on there?
Early on, maybe, you had to deal with some of that. It's reached such a point, for one, that my life is so much greater now than it had ever been.
And plus you're into the word, sounds like.
Into the word on a daily basis.
So that right there is the cure, I would say. If you really and totally run into that whole thing, that'll cure the porn addiction.
Yes and no. Just reading the word isn't going to do
living the word,
living the word,
and really buying into it. Because there's a lot of people out there that they don't really buy into the Bible or any of the religions, so it's not going to help them. Why? Because they don't really buy into it. But if all of a sudden you're into it, you're walking the walk, that's not moral or good in any way.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, period. So if I walked into a hotel room and I saw, porn going on, personally, I'd say, oh, sorry, didn't mean to bother you. Why? Well, because obviously you're trying to rub one out here or something fucking deviant, right? Mm-hmm. What else? Why would you have porn on just for fun? You wouldn't. So, but if you start getting religious, start going to church, start hanging around more like-minded people, I'll bet you that porn addiction starts to fade.
If you're living it out. And truthfully, Brad, that was one of the reasons I started doing what I did. Because you would think, yeah, there's going to be the church, there's going to be church support groups, and go see your pastor. But the data tells us, and research shows, that roughly 50% of pastors are struggling with this. So
yeah, and the other 50 are freaking diddling little kids. Not all of them, obviously. Yeah, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of people that claim to be religious that aren't.
Yeah, we've had great church leaders, great pastors come through our program as well.
And by the way, let me take that back, because he said 50 and I said the other 50. I didn't mean that. In other words, there's a bunch of them that are out there being deviants in a lot of other ways. You hear about them.
Exactly, yeah.
And what's funny to me when you hear about these things, like the Catholic Church as an example, they have a pastor or a priest or whatever they're called there, that gets caught humping a little kid, and they just move him to another church. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, that, number one, is criminal. Mm-hmm. Number two, shouldn't they be out of your church at this point?
I think so.
You wouldn't be in my church. Like, that'd be the end of that, or I'd leave the church over that.
You harm a child, I think there's one of two places that you belong. I think behind bars or down below.
I think the rule should be, if you harm a child, that child's family gets to do whatever they want with you. Mm. And if you're done, if you're alive after that, well, then we'll take you to court and see what the law says after that. Bars. So now you're going to end up in prison, but you're going to first spend about an hour with the relatives of that kid.
Yeah. Real accountability.
Dude.
That would change a lot of people's behavior if we had real accountability like that.
Yeah. So describe your day. You literally deal with this every day, because a lot of times when we're dealing with everybody else's problems, it kind of weighs on us. So what's your normal day look like?
Yeah. I wake up, morning routine, check the boxes that I need to, mentally, physically, emotionally, kind of get connected, set the plan on for the day. I'm big on, doing hard, difficult things and, keeping your small commitments. So we help guys build a morning routine, because that helps you, build some momentum for the day. So, I check boxes every morning. I have a sauna, I have a cold plunge that I do first thing in my morning.
What temperature is that cold plunge?
It gets, if I'm really keeping the ice, so I'm in the process of converting it. I bought the ice barrel, so I have to every day fill it with ice, which is getting very, very tedious. But I get it around 55 to 50 is kind of the temperature that I can get it to.
Yeah, and by the way, that'll do just as well as 39.
Exactly.
I've researched the hell out of it.
Yep. 50 is kind of that barometer that you want to be at.
I got what's called a plunge. Yep. You go, it's coldplunge.com, mm-hmm. I think. Coldplunge.com. Go get yourself one. But it comes with, huh?
Is that an ad?
No, but they did give it to me.
Oh, they did?
They sent it to me and said it was free, because I'm on social media. They said, maybe you can make a few posts, which I did. And, they sold some units from it. I bet. But I don't mind telling people, because it's a good one. Mm-hmm. It's not because they gave it to me. I would recommend it even if I bought it. And I was going to buy it.
Yeah.
I'm just glad they gave it to me. But it comes with a unit where mm-hmm. it stays cold.
Yeah. I bought mine. So I wish I would have done a little bit more research prior to getting it, because I had a buddy that bought the ice barrel, which is a great piece. It's a great unit. It does a job. It was right around $1,200, but I had a buddy that got one, and he became an evangelist for it. He's like talking about it all the time. So I went online and bought it. And then I realized, because I thought it was insulated, and I thought I'll put ice in it maybe once, maybe twice a week. I didn't realize I also live in Tampa, Florida. So it's incredibly hot. So yeah, I'm having to fill it every single day, but they do make, Penguin Chillers makes a chiller that you can connect to the ice barrel, which turns it basically into the cold plunge. And then you can control it. It goes all the way down to 39 up to 55.
Yeah. I keep mine at 48.
Okay. Yeah.
And everyone tells me I'm a puss. I'm like, dude, listen, if I get the same benefit at 48 as I do 39, why go colder?
Yeah. Well, you'll be at 48 now, and then in a couple months, maybe you'll be at 47. Maybe be at 46.
I'm gonna stick at 48.
You're gonna stick it at 48 to see how
long.
long.
Dude, it's cold.
Well, that's what I'm saying is eventually
my fingers start hurting after a minute.
Yeah. Well, eventually your body's gonna get used to it, and then you'll maybe need it a little bit colder. So I would say in time.
How long have you been doing it?
I've had mine for about 18 months. I wasn't super consistent with it, but it's been 90 plus days at this point, that outside of today, because I woke up in Vegas, and last week I spent a couple days in Atlanta. I haven't missed a day. So I haven't missed a day in almost four plus months.
How does it make you feel?
I've done a lot of drugs in my life, Brad. There's nothing that makes me feel better than a cold plunge. Like it's just the rush, the endorphins, the energy that I get from it, the clarity.
If people are depressed, from what I heard, I have a couple of buddies that are like depressed, and they're like, dude, it changed my life literally.
Yes.
Over depression.
Yes.
Like, wow, that's weird, but it does. Mm-hmm. It raised my testosterone through the roof.
Yep.
Like I get up, I cold plunge in the morning, then I hit the gym, and apparently that combination, it jacks your testosterone.
So you do it before training.
I cold plunge, and then I go to the gym.
Okay. And I think that's the best way to do it.
I read that you're not supposed to go to the gym and then cold plunge, even though they do it, like, the athletes that do it, they said no, it's the opposite.
Well, depending upon the goal, depending on what you're training for, like it will blunt hypertrophy. So if you're training to build muscle, then doing it after, I think up to 4 hours after,
you'll stop it.
You want to avoid. Yeah. So it blunts that, blunts the stimulus.
Okay. So you get up, you cold plunge, you do your routine.
Yeah. And then I get into, a couple hours of, kind of deep focused work. So this is where, create content, create, books, update our programs. That's the time that I work on the things that I need. And that gets me to about 10, 11. And then I break my day up by getting a late afternoon late morning, early afternoon workout, because come 1, 2 is I'm on calls, coaching, consultations, podcasting. So I try to split my day with me first, fill my cup up so I have everything that I need, and then serve the world, after lunch.
So every day, nonstop, you're like a soldier at war.
Yeah. Well, I was doing some business coaching up until like March, April of this year. I was taking about 15 to 20 hours, but it was actually holding me back from serving our community to the level that I can. But yeah, so every day, 7 days a week, this is my life at this point. Planted my flag deep in the ground.
Right on. So if someone's listening to this and they're kind of identifying, but not quite, is there a like a threshold that you have to be aware of? Because if I heard this, I would be like, I ain't addicted to porn. And yes, I've watched it, and I'm not even against watching it.
Yeah.
Once in a while.
Yeah.
But if you said, when's the last time? I don't know. Fuck, years, I think. But I might just be weird because, is there a threshold that someone has to watch out for? Like, because there might be a guy like me listening going, man, it ain't no big deal. When in reality, bitch, you're not far from making it a big deal.
Yeah, so I would say to that guy out there, stop. Just go without it. And
if you can't, then
There you go, right? So it's going to reveal one of two things to you, right? Is if you say, you know what? I heard Frank on dropping bombs. I'm going to take this challenge up. Go 30 days without it. And if you made it, amazing, right? Like you weren't struggling with it. I can almost guarantee though that if it was a part of your life, at least on a weekly basis, you will feel different by the end of that 30 days. Wow. I think you'll have more mental clarity. I think you'll have more focus. I think you'll see people a little bit differently. So take the challenge. And then if you say, I'm going to do this for 30 days, and by the end of the 7 days, you're back, laptop pulled up, late night screen, whatever, like you're back there, then maybe something can kind of, click and say, hey, let's reach out to Frank. Let's find some help here.
Hey, and here's another deterrent, if you will. When you're sitting there, doing what you're doing, man, there's cameras in those laptops. There's cameras in that phone right there.
Yeah.
And if you don't think they are taking your picture every 5 seconds, They do.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're sitting here going like this with this phone, whether your camera's on or not, that thing's taking your picture every 5 seconds.
Where are those going?
Where are they going?
We'll all find out one day.
But it does do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like when you're sitting there freaking looking at a porn and fucking, rubbing one out, looking like a fucking weirdo. Dude, there's footage of you doing that. Like that's enough deterrent for me not to ever do it.
It's funny you say that,
I don't
Brad.
want to get caught.
I made this kind of like, it was, I tried to get somewhat polarizing on a post one day. I'm like, you know what? Here's something I can guarantee you'll never watch porn again. The next time you're sitting there with your pants around your ankles, screens pulled up, playing with yourself, have the camera on and video you. So if you're okay with watching other people being on video, just video yourself and then go back and watch it.
No, and then upload it.
Right? Yeah.
Put it out on the internet.
Yeah.
Because like they might freaking, like seeing themselves, but dude, nobody, any sane person would want to be caught and exposed, even though everyone knows it's fucking happening. Nobody wants that. So there's a deterrent for you, kids. Don't be spanking it.
I think we're in the process of the conversation being changed, though. I think you grew up. Magazines, it was a normal thing. It was almost an initiation to becoming a man. Here's a Playboy, take it out to the fort, leave it in the woods. Maybe you'll find one. Maybe the next group of guys will come. You mentioned guys like Tate and some of these bigger, male influencers are beginning to really talk about the dangers behind it.
How old are you?
I'll be 40 tomorrow.
Yeah, so they're like 35, 40 years old. Maybe you're right. Maybe shit's about to change and it's going to become a big issue.
It already is. It already is a big issue. And I think the awareness and acceptance around it being a big issue is beginning to rise. I mean,
what about us Gen Xers that are going to sit back and be like, fucking bunch of pussies. You can't even beat off anymore. Damn, what's wrong with these kids? You can't even jack off anymore.
Well, because our one of our programs is high ticket. It's not really high ticket in your world, but it's a higher ticket coaching program where it's a couple $1,000 to work one-on-one exclusive with me. Like those guys are Gen Xers, millennials. Like the 20-year-old guy's not paying me $5,000, for one-to-one coaching. He's going to buy one of our lower tier programs. A lot of the guys that I'm working with though are 40 plus, are business guys that are out there, and
they come to you full on. I got a problem with it. Damn.
Yep.
Well, there may be more than I expect out there. And that's why I brought you on. I want to raise awareness.
Yeah.
Maybe I got some people in the bomb squad that are struggling. And
I'm sure you do, Brad, because what I've seen is I've seen two guys. I've seen the guy that we've talked probably mostly about today that is kind of really struggling through life aimlessly, right? He's got no real clear direction. He's got no clear pathway. He's a crisis of this suppressing masculinity that's going on in the world right now. The younger guys. There's a lot of guys though that are doing big things. They're working in the financial sector. I've had a lot of guys that have been on Wall Street. Maybe they're entrepreneurs that are working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. And the only thing that they give themselves is porn at the end of the night, but it is becoming a problem. So I'd say that's probably more the audience that's going to hear this is the guy that has checked a couple of boxes. And then this is the last one that he needs to check to really find his purpose in life.
And what about, last question, what about like if your girl's into it?
What's the question?
Like what if your chick's into it and she wants to watch porn with you at night as a couple?
Yeah. So there's plenty of research that shows that relationships that watch pornography actually have lower sexual satisfaction than those that don't. So to think that watching pornography actually creates better intimacy in a relationship is a lie that I think a lot of people believe.
Can women reach out to you? Would that be like kind of almost contradictory? Because like I always thought if I'm a sex addict, I'm going to go to those meetings for sure.
Yeah.
Why? Because everybody else is the one. If I can go get there and get laid. If a female is addicted to porn, wouldn't she have the same issues eventually?
Yeah. So this was interesting. I was in Atlanta last week. I was there. I was doing a big podcast for a channel called Hardly Initiated, and they brought a panel on. So they brought me, well, not a full panel, but it was me, and it was a younger woman who was, I think, 23 years old. My focus has always been on helping and serving men. You know, a big part of the community is it's safe, and guys want to be able to talk about issues that they can't talk about in other circles of their life. So for me, I've kept it protected with we help men. I also know that the man's brain, the male brain, is different than the female's brain. You don't like visually, we are stimulated different than a woman is. So I never really believed that it was a major problem with women. Now I've had women that have reached out to me on social media. Hey, I love what you're talking about. Is there a place that I can go? I don't have that resource readily available, but I think younger girls though, because it's getting introduced to them at such a young age, just like boys, 8, 10, 11, 12 years old, young girls are seeing it there as well. So it's beginning to warp and change their mind. But this young girl, 23 years old, that was on the podcast last week with, said that she first saw it, I think she was 14, 15 years old, and it was cartoons. Like her first porn that she saw was cartoons. And this became, by the time she was 18, a daily thing that she had to then go through. So there are programs and places out there. Ours is protected, and it's just with men right now. Down the road, do we open it up to women? Potentially, if the need is big enough.
Right on.
I'd be open to that.
Good. Well, dude, appreciate you coming in. Folks, if you have any issues, get a hold of him, rebuiltrecovery.com, or you can follow him at Coach Frank Rich. Go listen to the Superhuman Life podcast. I suspect a book's on the way eventually, no?
Eventually, yep.
I figured that would be the case. Good job, man. Well, I appreciate you coming in. And folks, as always, until next time, keep it real.
The most scalable lead flow systems out there right now.
You have to buy leads, bro.
Yeah, and we do that.
And you have to buy them from me.
I will buy them from you. That's where Real Financial and Medicare Gurus unite right there.
That's right.
Well,
Real Financial is going to generate our own leads and buy our own leads.
And I want to buy some of your leads.
So Real Financial will also pay Sales Hammer.
I don't want to buy your leads, Brad. Just put it down. I'll give you my credit card number right now. You start selling me leads. Let's get them on tap.
Fair enough.